Welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Kelly, CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Operations here at SBAM, and I want to start off by welcoming one of our new elite members. They're Universal Transport 2 and the owner, Rolanda Shako. So thanks for joining. All right, Brian. So here we are in December, but we have a couple of important announcements to talk about that'll take place on January 1st. So minimum wage goes up again on January 1st. It's the second of a planned 3-year incremental increase. So give us a few details.
Yeah, so this is a schedule that went into effect that you heard us talk about in the beginning of the year, which was about the adopt and amend proposal that put the Earned Sick Time Act into effect. That proposal also it also created a schedule for minimum wage increasing, and that schedule just happens automatically here going forward. So let me share with you where it's at right now, which is 12.48. So 12.48 an hour is the regular minimum wage today. That changes to 13.73 per hour starting on January 1st. So if you have any workers that are at minimum wage, that's something that you really need to work into your system in that change. And unfortunately, that's not the end of it. It will continue to escalate. I think that the next jump I think is to $15 an hour, although I didn't look it up before this broadcast, and then it will increase by inflation after that. So on January 1st of 2026, 13.73 an hour.
All right, so just a little follow-up question for you, Brian. That's the regular minimum wage rate, but what about tipped wages or other classifications?
Yeah, there are a couple other classifications. Tipped wage is the biggest one. So the tipped wage, the hourly rate, so the minimum hourly rate for a tipped worker is increases to $5.49 per hour. That's 40% of the full minimum wage. So that's the way that it works. You have the full minimum wage, whatever 40% of that is the tipped wage, $5.49 an hour. And of course, that assumes that the difference is made up by tips. So it's kind of a misnomer that a restaurant worker's income depends on tips. If tips don't come up and make up the difference, then the restaurant owner has to make up the difference. So 549 is that. And then there's also a classification for minors aged 16 and 17. So if you have minors working for you that are 16, 17, it's 85% of the regular minimum wage. And that would go to 11.67 per hour. So that goes from 10.60 currently to 11.67 per hour.
All right, something else that's happening on January 1st. There was a law that kind of set a schedule in motion related to unemployment insurance benefit increases. So give us the details on that too.
Yeah, right at a time when the use of the unemployment fund is going up, we're also seeing the benefits, the payments to claimants for weekly benefits go up. That schedule is already set into place, and unfortunately, it is going to put some strain on the unemployment fund at a time when both utilization and cost per claim, so that's kind of a double whammy, will be going up. It will result in higher assessments to employers. There's no other way. That's just the way the math works. And when they decided to increase the benefits, they were essentially deciding to increase the assessments on employers. It will jump up on January 1st, 2027 or 2026 to $530 a week. And then a year from now, it'll go up to $614 an hour or $614 probably, sorry, a week. So that is it makes it really kind of incongruent with minimum wage, frankly. I think it's safe to assume that there will be more demand on the fund the higher you make the weekly benefit. It's just the way it always works. People will make rational personal economic decisions, and so I do expect that we're going to have that the trust fund, which has made a lot of progress since it got depleted and almost bankrupt during the pandemic, that this is going to take what is on its way to being healthy and put some strain on it. So it went from close to broke to about 3 billion. Now 3 billion is not um, it's nowhere near what it was before the pandemic, which was over 5 billion, but still has made a lot of progress. Now there's one other threat on the unemployment insurance trust fund. This is the fund that is fully funded by employers. You, the employer, pay all the money into this fund. And so when it gets depleted, it is employers that make up the difference. There is a proposal in the Senate right now, the Senate Bill 700. And we fear that this bill might be passed out of the Senate and sent over to the House even before the end of the year, maybe as soon as the next day or two, like this session week, next session week. Um, and so this is a big problem, this bill, because what it does is that it forgives those who are overpaid during the pandemic out of the fund. Well, it might sound nice to go ahead and forgive that, but the thing is that most of that money is not owed to the state. That money is owed to the federal government. And so if the state says, hey, citizens, you don't have to pay it back, then if the feds treat us like they did Massachusetts on a similar issue, that means that the state has to pay the money back. So we can't waive most of the repayment requirements because it's not owed to the state, it's owed to the feds. And what is the state likely to do is to pay the feds out of the unemployment insurance fund, which means that you, the employer, would have to make up the difference. Now that truly would make that fund go broke. And we're very, very discouraged and concerned about this. We did do a call to action and we had some great response to it. Still open if you want to, if you haven't done it yet, let your senator know that you do not want them to pass this bill. We have also suggested to them an amendment to the bill, which would say if the state wants to forgive the debt, fine, but make a guarantee that you're not going to pay for it out of the trust fund. Don't make employers pay because the state made mistakes during the pandemic and how much they paid out of those funds. So this is a pretty important issue. All these things kind of converging at once. Use of the trust fund is going up. The amount of every claim coming out of the trust fund is going up. So the cost per claim is going up. And this forgiveness of federal debt by the state may result in the trust fund having to pay the feds back. So lots of concerns here and something that we're taking very seriously and making a top priority here at SBAM.
So Brian, you might have mentioned it, but let's make sure people understand that this is just the next increase, but there are more to come. So kind of follow that up too.
Yeah, that's right. So what the legislature has done in recent years, particularly in the year 2024, and then the court decision also from 2025, is it puts multiple year increases that will impact employers into effect. We already talked about minimum wage going up kind of a set amount in multiple years. The the weekly maximum claims out of the trust fund are going to increase yet again. So it's already increasing now to 530. It'll go up to 614 in 2027. So catching up or staying current on the trust fund is going to be hard enough even without Senate Bill 700. So we're hopeful that they'll respect the math on this and make guarantees to small businesses that they're not going to make the small businesses pay for the state's mistakes.
All right, and I did share the link for the call to action, so please fill that out. All right, so there's the court was considering the legality of the marijuana wholesale tax, and today a decision was made, Brian. So what did they decide?
Yeah, so there's a special court, it's called the Court of Claims, and every single lawsuit against the state starts in the Court of Claims, and then it can be appealed from there. The 24% wholesale tax that went into effect, or that was passed, I should say, as part of the budget for part of a road funding plan, That's set to go into effect on January 1st of 2026, so just here in a few weeks. That was challenged by an association representing marijuana companies. And that the judge had taken it under advisement, but decided today that the tax is still on, so they're not going to halt it. Now, the the gist of the challenge of this against the law was to say that, hey, this was a citizen-initiated law, marijuana legality, and that said in that law how you change, or it said how you tax the marijuana. So it said here's the tax, and it was, I think, a 10% excise tax. And then, so what opponents of this law are saying is, look, that's the citizen initiative. Legislature, you can't change it. You have to ask the voters to change it if you want to change the taxes on marijuana. And what the administration is saying, and the Attorney General's office that defends state law and laws that are passed by the legislature, decided by the governor, is no, they're not changing the taxes. They're adding a whole new tax on top of it. So there's an excise tax that was in the original law, and the legislature left that alone. They didn't seek to increase it or change it in any way. They added a brand new type of tax. That's what the state said in their defense. This particular judge agreed with the state. And so it's not clear at this juncture, because this decision is so fresh, if it'll be appealed or not. So I think this will be a tough law to get struck down. This is, I'm not a lawyer, but just looking at the nature of what they did and how they crafted it, it seemed to be very specifically crafted to withstand this type of challenge. They did not touch the current tax, and they added a new one on. And if you look at well, it might be against the spirit of this original citizens initiated law for marijuana. It doesn't seem to be a blatant or an explicit violation to add a whole different tax at the wholesale level on top of it. And so this is one where it seems like the state probably has the upper hand. Not clear to me if it's going to be challenged, but at this point, as of January 1st, it's going into effect.
So Cranes actually published an article recently that highlighted jobs in this industry. So what's at risk here?
Yeah, this is a growing industry, and people feel a certain kind of way about it. Lots of people all over the board on whether they support marijuana businesses. Support has generally grown, or I should say, at least acceptance has grown a lot in the last 10 years toward this type of business. But take that out of the equation for a moment. The industry itself is responsible actually for a very big chunk of the private sector job growth in recent years in Michigan. And so those jobs are already somewhat at risk, because the industry is really struggling with kind of an oversupply, difficult policing, illicit activities, and frankly, not a big appetite to police uh, uh, illegal activities around marijuana outside of the legal system. And so it's a vulnerable industry. It's growing. It's responsible for a lot of jobs, but those jobs they don't feel very secure at the moment, given all of these dynamics. You put the tax on top of it. The overall economic impact is one that policymakers I think, would be well advised to make sure that they stay on top of, because there's big risk here.
All right, let's move into Election Watch 2026. We're actually close to 2026 now. There's some new polling out by Mitchell. And so let's start with the Republican gubernatorial primary.
All right, not a big surprise here, because none of the candidates are spending. None of the candidates are up on TV, and so this is really, at this point, you should consider this a name ID contest. And clearly, the one with the highest name ID is John James, a member of Congress. So he came out with 48%. That's a lot at this stage, but again, it's mainly, we're talking about name ID. Former attorney Mike Cox coming in at 11%, and then Tom Leonard, former Speaker of the House, at 5%, and Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt coming in at 2%. So those other candidates, the not John James candidates, Nesbitt and Cox both have millions of dollars that they've either raised or put into the election. So I think it's fair, but caution, if you will, on seeing this big gap is that there are some resources that could change the mix, the name ID mix that is driving the numbers today. But at this point, definitely John James still looks like he's in pole position.
All right, what about the Democrats?
Now, among the Democrats, it seems maybe a little less fluid because Jocelyn Benson, current Secretary of State, is also at 48%. But her main opponents, Garland Gilchrist, who is the current Lieutenant Governor, at 12%, and Chris Swanson, the Genesee County Sheriff, at 5%. But neither of those candidates, Gilchrist or Swanson, neither of them have millions of dollars on hand to change the math on it. So, and the Democratic primary, really not only is Jocelyn Benson in pole position, but her opponents have not shown the ability to put serious money together to change the numbers, the name ID, the favorabilities, and all that sort of thing. So Benson's in pole position clearly and looks strong. I would say before too long, people are going to start talking about her as a lock.
Okay, and looking toward the general election.
Now, the general election is interesting because that's where the Mike Duggan factor comes in. Remember, there's an independent candidate, the former mayor. I say former now because the Detroit mayoral election has now happened, and Mary Sheffield was elected there. And Mike Duggan is running as an independent, and what that means is he will not go through a primary. If he collects the signatures, which he will be on the general election. So if these numbers are to hold out, you'll have probably James and Benson being the Republican and the Democrat, and then in addition to that, Mike Duggan. And so there was a poll that same poll asked the general election question, and it actually showed John James leading Benson 37 to 31%, with Mike Duggan coming in at 18%. And so they did a couple other matchups as well in this poll, assuming other people winning. But the bottom line is Mike Duggan has moved up quite a bit. Okay, so Mike Duggan 6 months ago would have been in the high single digits. And so those numbers have basically doubled. And then I would say it's notable that James is leading Benson, which suggests that as Mike Duggan has risen, that it's taken more from Benson than James at this juncture. So that's again not a surprising outcome because Duggan's history being mayor of Detroit probably makes it more likely that he would take votes for Benson. But here's the X factor in it. Duggan's name ID and campaigning that he's doing around the state, the billboards, the digital advertising, all that, pretty significant spend in raising it. It's focused in areas that actually are lean Republican. And so over time, will he win over those areas more? I think that's the biggest question in this election. Really, he needs to get his numbers into the high 20s when people start imagining, like, wow, could he win? And Benson needs to show this, a horse race, or else what will happen is that more Democrats might leave her and go to Duggan, thinking if they start seeing him as a better bet. So lots and lots of dynamics that are happening in this election. It's truly an unusual and I guess I'd say once in a lifetime at the gubernatorial level, in my lifetime anyway. A race shaping up like this one is never happened before. So it'll be interesting for us close observers and how it works. But ultimately, I think this is going to be a three-way horse race.
And this is my reminder to all of you watching that SBAM has been hosting conversations with the gubernatorial candidates since September. And we have another conversation coming up next week with Tom Leonard on Monday. And we also have the recordings available for our VIP and elite members on our website for those that we've already hosted. So sbam.org slash candidate series will get you there. And we'll be announcing our dates with the remaining candidates here very soon, so stay tuned to that. All right, so Brian, going back to polling, let's talk about the US Senate race.
All right. In the Senate race, you do have you've got primaries coming up there as well, but on the Republican side, it looks like generally a done deal or a lock for Mike Rogers. So same candidate from the last election, that narrowly closest election in Michigan history, I believe. Statewide election, when Slotkin came out on top, but very, very close. And so on this race, he will be running against the winner of the Democratic primary. And the Democratic primary includes Haley Stevens, Mallory McMorrow. Haley Stevens is a member of Congress. McMorrow is a state senator. And then Abdul El Sayed, former Detroit health department officer, is doctor. And also gubernatorial candidate in 2018, so one of the candidates that Whitmer beat in the primary. And so those three are running, and Haley Stevens ahead, not surprising there, but very close. She had 27% in that primary, 24% for McMorrow, and 16% for Abdul El Sayed. And so that's a close one. That's one that I think is going to it's it's probably not going to be clear like other primaries in the or I actually other primaries are starting to yeah, other primaries are looking very clear in the gubernatorial election, like big separations. But in the state Senate with the Democrats, it doesn't look like it's going to be a clear shot for anybody. This looks like it could be a real horse race as well.
All right, and this poll also gave us an indication on the issues important to people. So what is on voters' minds?
Well, the number one issue probably will not surprise people, economy and inflation. And pollsters sometimes separate these two things out. What I think was interesting that Mitchell did is he put them together because um, what's happening is that, these are technically two different things. Inflation is one thing and the health of the economy is another thing. But to voters, they're the same thing. In the minds of voters, these things are just linked in a way that he decided to make them a category together. And so the that was 36%. So that's the top issue. 16% said threats to democracy, and that's probably more of a statement among uh, generally among Democrats about the federal government and the president. So there's a group that's their top issue, 16%. Crime and policing coming at 10, healthcare at 10, climate change and in the environment at 6. So it's interesting. Abortion and roads came in at 6 and 5, bottom of this list. And so if you were to think about, I was just kind of saying that I say about elections here in Michigan, the only thing you know about the next election is that it'll be nothing like the previous election. And so in previous elections, you might think about these things. Roads and abortion were like top issues, top things on people's minds and driving. But when the economy is struggling and people are really frustrated, definitely though that rises to the top. And so they still have opinions. People still have opinions on other things. They're still going to factor that in. But the candidate that is able to speak to rising prices and inflation and the economic concerns of people, those are the candidates that are going to be successful in the next election. And this is yet another poll that would suggest so.
All right, that is everything we have for you today. Please join us at our upcoming Owner to Owner event. It's Thursday here in the Lansing area at Impression 5 Science Center. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so. And then I did mention the Tom Leonard event next week, Monday. We hope you have a great week, and we will be back here Monday at 3 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.